Brad, at what point did you learn that you would be playing the Hawks and that you were the 5 seed? And
when we walked in the locker room. I mean, you know, we knew generally the scenarios, but I still had to ask. You know, I had heard Atlanta lost when we walked down the corridor, and then I had heard Charlotte was winning all night. So, you know, we knew that it was going to be one of those three. So I've got all 3 teams on my laptop. My laptop's about ready to explode, and I can delete 2 of them.
Part 2 of the Garden Report here, where we talk about the first-round matchup with the ATLians Atlanta Hawks, one of my favorite teams to watch in the NBA, mostly because of Paul Millsap, who has always been a really good player. Really has always been a star, but this year has been an elite player, probably one of the best defenders in the NBA this year, is a reliable perimeter player and one of the best post players in the league. The Celtics have always really struggled with him, and I know we didn't have that good of a game when they played last weekend, but he's been the guy that's always been the matchup problem for the Celtics, because the Celtics like to go small, and he's a guy that is like kind of plays like a small ball guy, but he's an absolute elite player in the post.
He is a tough matchup, and the Spurs as a team are a sneaky great team.
Which is why the Celtics are not playing the Spurs, but playing the Hawks in the first round.
The Hawks as a team are a sneaky great
But
team.
they are kind of like the
Spurs. What I was going to say is that they are kind of like the Spurs, so I kind of ruined my own point there. I jumped the gun.
Great point, man.
But Isaiah Thomas said the same thing. He said they kind of remind him of the Spurs, where they have, you know, it could be a different guy in every single night for them, you know, whether it's Millsap, what you talked about, whether it's Horford, Teague. They've got a lot of options. They came into Boston and they took it to the Celtics earlier this season. But Millsap, always a sneaky under the radar, great player. Going to get it done on both ends of the court. Never going to really make the highlight reels. You're not going to, you know, if you only watch SportsCenter top 10 plays, you probably won't see a lot of them. But he's that guy who, you know, they rely on him on both ends of the court. He comes through for them. He's been there. Even in Utah, before he came to, you know, he was always a, you know, reliable player. So that's, as you mentioned, a tough matchup for them. And the guys down low and on the perimeter, they're going to have their hands full.
So Ken Bazemore has been really good for them this year. Makes up for the loss of DeMar Carroll.
Oh, yeah.
Gives them that athletic swing that they need. The question is Kyle Korver going to take off? I mean, this year has not been that great of a year for him compared to last year. And I think it's been one of the main differences for the team this year, why they were still a 48-win team. They were still really good. But the Celtics, when Korver burns them, they're screwed. And as much as they can hustle, you know, he's just that guy that somehow gets open, needs a split-second window when he gets the shot off. So is he the guy that really they have to focus their game plan on? Is he still that player?
I mean, you can't not consider him a threat in any game. You know, it doesn't matter what the numbers say. A shooter is going to shoot, and a guy like him with his track record, and Brad Stevens will be the first to tell you that Korver can hit any shot in the court. And he gives, I mean, I specifically remember him, you know, going out of his way to point out like how lethal Kyle Korver is from three-point range. And I know for a fact that he's going to he's going to definitely make a point to spend a lot of attention on Korver, limit his shot, limit his open looks. And if Korver, he might be the difference, because if he is hitting some of those shots, you know, that's just another aspect of their game, of the Hawks game, that, you know, they can really, that takes them to that next level. You know, if you're starting to hit some of those corner threes, or, you know, that's a big swings, you know. Long shots, long rebounds. If Korver's going to miss a bunch of those, Celtics get out in transition. That's where they're at their best, in that transition basketball, fast pace. You know, things kind of slow down a little bit in the playoffs, but if it's up to the Celtics, they'll keep things, you know, as fast as they can.
Well, it'll be a really interesting series to see when games come down to the wire, the matchup between most likely Paul Millsap and Jay Crowder. Jay Crowder struggled guarding Paul Millsap earlier in the year, but he's gotten a lot more experience playing that 4 in the small ball lineup. I think we're going to see those kind of lineups where he's playing next to either Amir Johnson, Jared Solinger, or Kelly Olynyk. And then we're probably going to even see the lineup of coma, as I like to call it, which is kind of the Celtics version of lineup of death, where you have Marcus Smart probably covering Jeff Teague, Isaiah Thomas probably chasing around Kyle Korver or Kent Bazemore, whomever else is out there, maybe Dennis Schroeder. Then you got Avery Bradley in there to kind of lock down on their key perimeter guy, whether it's Korver, whomever. And then you have Evan Turner and Jay Crowder out there. So you're a super versatile offensive team that can put on a ton of pressure. But Atlanta is that team that you just can't really do that against if they have both Horford and Millsap out there.
Those two guys, I mean, Horford and Millsap, I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about it. The Celtics, We're in, there were some talks that maybe the Celtics were interested in Horford at the deadline at some point. Well, what if they had swung a deal, made something happen? Then you're most likely not playing the Hawks in the playoffs. It could be the Celtics' own undoing that they didn't get a deal done. But you're right, with the personnel that the Hawks have, they can mix things up just as much as the Celtics can. And if they've got more talent at certain positions, then now they're making the rules. They're forcing Brad Stevens to adapt to them. So that's where it gets kind of dangerous, and that's why the Hawks have been so successful last year. I mean, they were one of the best teams in the league all of last year until injuries kind of hurt them down the stretch there. And this year too, I mean, they were this close to being broken up, and now look at them. I mean, they're a team that you don't want to play. And I have to say, out of the Hawks, Heat, and Hornets, they were the team that as an onlooker, if I'm a Celtics fan or if I'm Brad Stevens, they're probably the team that I didn't want to play.
Sure. They're the most well put together,
Yeah,
best coach
absolutely.
of all those
They've been
teams.
there, they've
Although
done
Steve
that.
Clifford's been great this year
He
for
has
Charlotte.
been great, but it comes down at the end of the day, it's going to come down to guys making shots, and it's going to come down to talent. And I think
and the
Hawks,
system executing well,
exactly.
which
And
the
it
Hawks can
only
do.
take you so far. At the end of the day, you need the players that can take you to the promised land. And guys like Horford, Millsap, Teague, those guys, they've done it and they can do it.
All right, well, we're in for an absolute treat. We will see you after Game 3 when the Celtics come back from their series with Atlanta. It'll be fascinating to see what
We don't know when that is
what
as
that
of
will
right
be.
now, though.
We don't know, but we'll definitely let you know as soon as we find out. So for Jimmy, I'm Jared with Jeremy behind the camera. For the Facebook live feed over there, thanks for tuning in, everybody. This has been the Garden Report. The regular season is over, and we will see you for
Playoffs,
the
baby.
playoffs, baby. Peace out.
Isaiah, how much do you think the playoff experience last year will help you guys?
I think it'll help us a little bit. We just got to win one game, though. We need to get that off our belt. We didn't win one last year, so hopefully we can sneak one out of at least one of the games out of Atlanta, and then build on that. So I mean, we're ready to show the world what we're capable of doing.